Welcome back, and so today we're going to look at how we insert a little content. We're going to remind you how to make a responsive image because we're going to put some basic content on this page, and then we're going to use this page as our template to create a beer HTML, food HTML, location HTML, events HTML, and catering HTML pages. Because we already have the navigation here, and like I said, we're going to put some content on here. Because this header is going to be persistent, or navigation is going to be persistent, so it doesn't make sense to have to build everything from scratch 6 different times for 6 different pages. Just build it once and then swap out the changing parts. If you have a solid design, not all the content should change. There should be things that stay on the screen, like the navigation. Okay, so let's first of all make sure all this stuff is correct. This is actually an animated image. Let's go ahead and look at this really quick. We'll preview this, Google Chrome, save it. You can see what happens here. When I when I first load the page, my queue fills up with beer suds. Okay, so before I would duplicate these pages, I would make all these consistent. I haven't made these 4 graphics yet, where I have an empty beer and a full beer, because I need to switch those back. It's a background image where the empty beer is swapped out with the full beer via CSS. It's a transition where I shift a property and use a transition to make it a smooth thing. And I just haven't made these 4 yet, but I would. So the important thing to remember is finish your first page before you duplicate it, because you're going to be duplicating everything. You're going to be duplicating the links, you're going to be duplicating the rollovers and all the selectors and everything. So it's a good idea to make sure it's done first, or you're going to have to modify every single subsequent duplicate page if you made an error. Okay. So first, let's make sure I have my links in here. So let's go to my Properties Inspector. Just to remind you how you put your links in. So that one's linked to beer HTML. Here's my link. And remember, if you're linking to something external, you want to use this target thing and do target new in this dropdown. But we're not linking to an external link. This is all our own content. And I arbitrarily came up with beer HTML. That file does not exist yet. If you look in my local files, it doesn't exist yet, because what I'm going to do is duplicate this page, rename it to beer HTML, and then duplicate another version of it, name it food HTML, etc. So I have basically a template. I'm using this index as a template. All right, so I just came up with these as good ideas for our page titles. So this one's beer. Guess what this one is? If you guess food HTML, you're correct. And if you guess location HTML, you're also correct, etc. All right, so these are already linked, even though there's nothing for them to actually go to just yet. And again, the links are in there now, because when I duplicate it, it will also duplicate the links. This logo is linked. I should probably link as well. I should probably link this to index.html. If I forgot that, I'd have to go to all the subsequent pages and make sure that this goes back to my home. All right? This is often the case where your logo serves as your link to your home page. All right, so that's index.html, which is the title of this page. It's linking to itself, so that if someone goes to catering and they click on this, it'll go back to index. Because on the index, you want to have something welcoming, or in my case, I'm going to have the daily specials, that sort of thing. So I got all this room down here, and this picture I took of Heather at the Heidelberg, which is a very old pub in Heidelberg, Germany, in case you're wondering. And what we'll do is we'll have to go to our split view here for a minute and go to our source code and add some HTML. So I'm going to go down to the end of my header, but before my body, and just insert a section. We're going to insert into the section just one image that will be a, oopsie, you know what I did here. I know why I didn't put this on yet. I need to make another rule for my pub. The second I made it an image, or a link, you know what happened? It moved because I have a selector for all my links. I'm going to have to give this a unique link, or modify my selector, because clearly I don't want that link selector to attach to this. I'm going to take that link out of there real quick. You can do that two ways. I can just go back and delete it where it was before, or you know what, I can just take the link out up here. It is entirely up to me, but this is sort of bothering me, so for now I'm going to take it out, and then we'll have to make a, like I said, a different selector for that one. Properties. All right. All right, power selectors. Point it out once more. Okay, so back to where we were. After the header and before the body ends, I'm going to insert a section. I'm going to give this an ID, and I'm going to call this my specials. In fact, I'm going to even call it my home specials. Because it's going to be the specials for my restaurant. Okay, and it's an ID, so it's going to auto-populate. It's going to have a hashtag. I'm going to put it on my style sheet, my Mighty Quinn Pub one. You should be using an external style sheet now. Remember, you can define one here if you want, or in your CSS designer. Okay, I'm going to make this box. I'm going to give it a width. I'm just going to guess for now and have it be 60%. Right? It's going to be responsive. If it's 60%, I probably want a margin. On the top is just going to be a guess, 2%. But the left margin is the important one. I want this to look basically centered. So if it's 20% and then 60%, that'll leave another 20% on the right. Don't even need to put that. It'll just be what's left over. But that makes up 100%, right? 20 plus 60 plus 20. That should put this right in the center. And like always, I'm going to give this some garish background color for now, just so I can make sure it's there. And then I'll put my ping in it and then get rid of the color. All right. Okay. Okay. I did not give it a height. You're correct. Because the image that's inside of it is going to define the height. So let's go ahead and insert that image. Since I got my insert menu open already, and I have this content in here selected, I can replace that with an image. So let's go ahead and insert an image. And that image is my specials ping. It looks like nothing because it's white text. So it's white text that's a ping, so you don't see anything. You'll see it in a minute when it goes on something dark. There we go. All right, now I can strip out this type. And while I'm stripping things out, I want this image to be responsive. So, this stuff is going to have to go right here. The width and height is going. All right, because remember, I'm going to make a rule for this, and that rule is what's going to make it responsive. So let's go to my CSS designer, hit my little plus here. It knows I want, because I have this image selected, it gives me my selector for the images within my home specials section. All right, so my green section is home specials, and that there's only one image inside of it, so I can go ahead and make something for that. So I'm going to hit return, check the show set, and make my width 100%. Now remember, it's going to be 100% of the parent. The parent is home specials. So, and that's the reason I didn't put a height on, because then I'd have to worry about trying to remember what the aspect ratio is and all that crap. And I didn't want to have to remember that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and take off that ugly background now because everyone can see what's going on. So I'm going to so it'll look like this. And again, it's centered because this div, my home specials div, is set to a 60% width with a 20% margin. Okay, this is 20%. That again leaves about 20% for my right margin, but I didn't even need to specify that. I mean, I could have if I wanted to, but sometimes if your math is a little off, like maybe there's like a little padding in here or something, and you go over 100%, things can get wonky. So if you don't specify it, it doesn't matter. This is the important margin right here. Okay. Let's go ahead and preview this just so you can see where we're at with our responsive image. And then we're going to go ahead and duplicate this because we're done. If everything works correct. Now again, these, okay, I'm not really done. I'm going to fix these guys, but that's a later. Do that later. All right. Everything looks good. It's time to duplicate this page. That's an easy thing. I can go to my files browser. Make sure this is saved. Also, preview it before you save it. Check it out. But if you duplicate it before it's saved, you're going to be saving an older version that doesn't actually have your changes in it. So save it. And then you can come over here and you can right click on it and duplicate it under edit. It's also Command D. So it took me a second to find that because I always just do Command D. After you duplicate it, you'll need to rename it. So again, right click on it and say rename under the edit menu. And then this will be my beer, HTML. Okay, so here's what's weird about Dreamweaver. Notice there's this weird thing that says index copy HTML, but that file does not even exist anymore. My new file is beer HTML. So go ahead and close all those little copies right away before they mess you up. At this point, I can go back to my index. I can do edit and duplicate and change, and go ahead and just make every one of these. So Control, edit, rename. This one was going to be food HTML. Okay, we're going to use this file at some point later in a different demo to show you how we adjust the content. So here's the idea. We will open up food HTML, which will look exactly the same as my index right now, and remind you, so everything is working the same. The thing I'm going to have to change, I'm going to need some menu items in here. I'm going to want actually 2 columns because I know my menu layout. It actually has 2 columns. So this column is going to get swapped out. If I only needed like an image gallery or something, I could swap it out with what I have right here. I already have a section. Just remember that this section has an ID, it's home specials, it's a unique ID, it should only be used once. And if I change it, my CSS designer, while I'm looking at my feed HTML page, it's also going to change on my index HTML page because it's a common style sheet. It's a style on my external style sheet, and all these pages use that same style sheet. Now, the style sheet is actually linked to up here. All right, so they're all linking to the same one, so I need to be careful. I have to remember that some of my classes are used by multiple things. So if I want to create something new, something that looks different from the other pages, then the best thing for me to do is just delete the content I don't need. So I can come down here, take my section out, and then what I'm going to do next is, from the next demo, is put 2 columns in here on my food HTML page. Just insert 2 columns. In fact, I'll go ahead and give you a preview now. So I can call this a div, or I can call it a section. Remember, the div is just sort of the catch-all for these things. These are all just areas, different areas. There's no really right answer for this. Some of these things are really obvious where they should be, like a footer should be at the bottom and a header should be at the top. But basically, you can use a div if it doesn't really fit any of these criteria. A div is just another box. So section or div would be fine right now. I can insert one of those. I'll go ahead and insert a div on this food page, and I'm going to call this, if I'm going to keep columns, if I'm going to reuse this on other pages, I can give it a class. If I'm only going to use it once, an ID, it sort of depends on your design. You should have little thumbnails of all your different pages already set up in Photoshop. So I'm going to assume I'm only going to use it once. So I'm going to call this like my menu column. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna use it twice because I'm gonna have 2 columns, and I want the columns to be the same. So I'm gonna set up a class, call it menu column. Instead of having column 1 and column 2, I'm gonna have a single column that I'll just use twice. I'll float it, and I'll have a certain width. it will be fine. So we'll say new CSS rule for my menu column, put it on mightyquinpubstyles.css, that's my external style sheet. I will say okie dokie. I will tell it to be a box with the width of, I'm going to have 2 columns. So I would say we're going to start with 35%. So if I have 2 of those, that'll be 70%. I can put 10% margins on the left, and that would center everything just perfectly. Okay, I like that math. Because it'll be 35 plus 10% would be 45, and that equals 90. That leaves me 10% on the right side too. All right. I will give it a height for now, which I'll probably take off in a little bit because once I have content in there, but I don't have any content in there now. So just so I can see it, I will give it a height. I'll give it a background color of like purple for now. And I'm going to have to float these guys because I want 2 of them. So I'm just going to say float left. And the margin. I'll do the top margin. I'm going to do like 120. No, this is just a guess for now. And I might change this to a percentage. And the left margin is the important one, which would be 10%. All right, so keep in mind we have a 10% margin, 35%, and those two add up to 45%. We have 2 columns, so that'll be 90. So I can say OK, and then OK. All right, there's my first column. I can simply, instead of inserting this again, the reason I used a class so I can have 2 of them, I'm going to return, put another one, and there it is. And just like I thought, they'd be perfectly centered because here's my 10% margin, here's my other 10% margin, and then it leaves me 10% because these are each 35. I'm going to be able to cut and paste my menu in here and assign some menu styles to them. So they'll look really, really nice when I'm done. And I'll probably make this a gray background that's partly transparent so we can still see that giant beer behind and Heather hiding behind the giant beer in the background just subtly. All right, so that's how you recreate. So now I have my index done. I have this ready for my content that I can cut and paste. I already have that typed out in Microsoft Word. All my menu, which I started by cutting and pasting it from another pub that I frequent. My menu is going to change just a little bit, but you know, I don't expect you all to type all that stuff. It probably hopefully exists already in some sort of document somewhere. But I do expect you to make it look super nice. So that's what we will do next. All right, we're done duplicating our page. If you have any questions, just email me. Alrighty. Bye.